Tauriel, the captain of the Mirkwood Guard, is often listed among the most divisive additions to Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy. Unlike most of the franchise's characters, Tauriel was never part of Tolkien's legendarium. She was created entirely for the films, a bold move that instantly set purists on edge. Her purpose was to expand the story's emotional range and include a strong female presence, something the Hobbit book lacked. Unfortunately, many fans felt her inclusion didn't blend naturally with Tolkien's world. Her storyline centered on a romantic subplot with Kili, a dwarf, an interspecies pairing that stretched credibility even by Middle-earth standards. The issue wasn't the concept itself, but how it overshadowed her otherwise strong qualities as a warrior and leader. What could have been a grounded portrayal of a competent elven commander instead became a vessel for melodrama and unnecessary tension. To make matters worse, her arc had minimal impact on the overall plot. She neither changed the outcome of the Battle of the Five Armies, nor contributed meaningfully to the quest's resolution. Fans often describe her as a studio note in elf form, existing more for box office appeal than narrative need. Alfred Lickspittle. If there were ever a character designed to test the audience's patience, it's Alfred Lickspittle, the oily, cowardly assistant to the Master of Laketown in the Hobbit films. Unlike Tauriel, who at least brought some depth and skill, Alfred contributed little beyond comic relief that rarely landed. He was not a Tolkien creation, but another cinematic invention, intended to serve as both humor and social commentary on greed and corruption among men. Instead, he mostly served as a recurring reminder that slapstick has limits. Throughout the trilogy, Alfred's defining traits are cowardice, self-preservation, and an uncanny ability to survive scenes that logic says he shouldn't. When Laketown burns, he flees with women's clothes and a chest of gold. When Bard stands against Smaug, Alfred hides behind debris. His every appearance seems carefully timed to break tension, often at the cost of emotional or dramatic momentum. Many fans consider him a symbol of everything that diluted the later Hobbit films: unnecessary filler, tonal inconsistency, and an over-reliance on shallow humor. Even the most forgiving viewers tend to agree, Alfred's continued survival feels less like luck and more like punishment for the audience. Denethor II, Steward of Gondor, is a character whose film portrayal sparked as much frustration as it did debate. In Tolkien's writings, Denethor is proud, intelligent, and tragic. A ruler slowly crushed by despair after years of peering into a palantir and seeing Sauron's power. He's flawed, yes, but never foolish. The films, however, turned him into a near caricature, a greasy, half-mad tyrant gnawing on tomatoes while his soldiers die outside Minas Tirith. The intention was clear: show how arrogance and hopelessness can destroy even the greatest of men. But the execution made Denethor appear less as a noble steward undone by tragedy, and more as an unhinged obstacle the heroes must tolerate until he conveniently sets himself on fire. The subtle complexity, Tolkien wrote, the internal struggle between pride, paranoia, and love for his sons, was replaced by chaotic shouting and poor table manners. Fans often express frustration because Denethor should have been one of the most layered leaders in Middle-earth. Instead, the films made him a cinematic shorthand for crazy authority figure. It's not that audiences hated Denethor for his choices. They hated that his choices were written to make him impossible to take seriously. Grima Wormtongue. Grima Wormtongue's problem isn't that he was poorly written. It's that he was so effective at being despicable that audiences couldn't stand him. As the manipulative counselor to King Theoden of Rohan, Grima personified deceit and moral decay. His very name, Wormtongue, tells you everything you need to know. Yet the hatred directed toward him goes beyond his treachery. Fans loathe him because he represents the corruption of something pure, the poisoning of loyalty, friendship, and even love. Under Saruman's influence, Grima turned the royal court into a nest of lies, isolating Theoden from his people while preying on Éowyn's sympathy in the most unsettling way possible. Every whispered word and lingering glance made him a living reminder of how power can twist weakness into cruelty. And while he eventually redeems himself, briefly, by slaying Saruman in the extended edition, it's far too late for anyone to care. Grima is the character audiences love to hate not because he's misunderstood, but because he's painfully real. Every workplace, every government, every story seems to have its own Wormtongue, someone who climbs by whispering poison and smiling while doing it. Lobelia Sackville-Baggins. Lobelia Sackville-Baggins is one of the earliest and most enduring examples of a character designed to irritate. Her obsession with Bilbo's spoons and property in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings isn't just comic relief, it's a study in petty greed. Lobelia represents the worst traits of the Shire: small-mindedness, gossip, and materialism wrapped in lace and social ambition. She's not evil, just persistently unpleasant. Her every appearance reminds readers and viewers alike that sometimes the most aggravating people aren't villains with dark towers. They're the ones standing at your gate, criticizing your garden and measuring your silverware. She's the kind of hobbit who would RSVP to a party she wasn't invited to, just to make sure everyone noticed her disapproval. And yet Tolkien, being Tolkien, eventually redeems her. After the War of the Ring, she stands up to the ruffians who occupy the Shire, earning genuine respect from those who once mocked her. But for many fans, that redemption arrives too late. Lobelia remains a symbol of social pettiness, proof that not all evil in Middle-earth wears armor. Sometimes it just carries an umbrella and bad manners. The Master of Laketown. The Master of Laketown stands as one of the more despised figures in The Hobbit, both in Tolkien's text and especially in Peter Jackson's adaptation. On the page, he's a symbol of political greed, a self-serving leader who exploits his people's trust and flees the moment true leadership is required. In the films, that corruption is exaggerated into something cartoonish, a preening, gluttonous bureaucrat whose main achievements include hoarding gold, flattering the powerful, and blaming everyone else when disaster strikes. While Tolkien wrote him as sly and calculating, Jackson's version leans heavily into farce. Every moment with the Master feels designed to underline how grotesque human greed can become when wrapped in pomp and privilege. Unfortunately, that exaggeration made him unbearable to watch. Not in the way great villains are, but in the way overacted side characters can be. He's a walking metaphor for political decay, yet so theatrically unpleasant that his death feels like narrative relief rather than tragedy. Fans dislike him, not because he's evil, but because he's pointlessly evil, corrupt without consequence, selfish without subtlety. He's a man who could have governed a thriving city, but instead drowned himself in his own gold. Literally. Ted Sandyman. Ted Sandyman, the Miller of Hobbiton, may be one of Tolkien's smallest characters, but his pettiness leaves a big impression. He's the Hobbit equivalent of a Facebook troll: loud opinions, no accomplishments, and a talent for mocking those who actually try to do something worthwhile. He taunts Sam about the elves, sneers at Frodo's talk of adventures, and later throws in with the ruffians who occupy the Shire. He's not evil, he's just small-minded in every sense. What makes Ted so despised is how ordinary his brand of nastiness feels. He's not corrupted by the ring or any dark power. He's corrupted by laziness, envy, and a stubborn refusal to believe in anything bigger than himself. When Saruman's industrial rule comes to the Shire, Ted eagerly helps tear it apart, proving that tyranny doesn't need dark lords when it has willing fools. By the time the Shire is restored, Ted is left jobless and forgotten, fitting for someone who mocked heroes while they were saving the world. He's the cautionary tale of complacency, the hobbit who traded community for convenience and ended up with nothing. Bill Ferny. Bill Ferny is what happens when cowardice meets opportunity. A petty spy and informant in Bree, he's the kind of man who sells out his neighbors for pocket change and then hides when trouble comes. He informs the ring-wraiths about Frodo, overcharges the hobbits for a half-starved pony, and spends the rest of his short literary career being a nuisance. He's universally hated, not because he's dangerous, but because he's spineless. Tolkien's villains, even Gollum, are at least complex. Ferny is simple. He's a man who sides with evil because he's too weak to stand for anything else. Even his name sounds like an insult. When Aragorn finally confronts him, he slinks away like the rat he is, surviving purely because killing him would be a waste of time. In a world of dragons and dark lords, Ferny is a reminder that evil doesn't always come cloaked in power. Sometimes it's just a man at a window, selling out decency one whisper at a time. The Mouth of Sauron. The Mouth of Sauron is one of Tolkien's most chilling minor figures, a man who gave up everything, even his name, to serve evil. In the books, he's a fallen emissary of Gondor who rose to become Sauron's voice, speaking in his stead to those beneath the Dark Tower. In the films, he's reimagined as a grotesque, lipless herald whose every word drips arrogance and decay. Fans' hatred for him is immediate and instinctive. He doesn't swing a sword or cast spells, he wields cruelty. His role at the Black Gate is pure psychological warfare, presenting Frodo's gear as proof of the Ring-Bearer's capture, twisting truth to demoralize the heroes. He's the ultimate bureaucrat of evil, smug, manipulative, and utterly servile. What makes him so despised isn't just his allegiance, but his eagerness to serve darkness. He's the kind of man who looks at tyranny and says, "Where do I sign?" His death at Aragorn's hand is one of the few moments fans unanimously cheer, not because it's heroic, but because it finally shuts the mouth that spoke for Sauron himself. For your next watch, check out The Difference Between the Lord of the Rings movies and Tolkien's books explained. It's the perfect follow-up to see how adaptation choices turned some characters into icons and others into controversy.